Good day. Today's lecture is devoted to the impact of technology on the educational process. In contemporary pedagogy, digital tools are no longer viewed as optional additions to teaching. They have become one of the factors that influence the organization of learning, the accessibility of knowledge, and the forms of interaction between teacher and student. The significance of this topic lies in the fact that technology affects not only the technical side of education, but also its pedagogical effectiveness. It changes the ways in which information is presented, how learners participate in classroom activity, and how educational outcomes are achieved. For that reason, the study of technology in education requires not a purely instrumental view, but a careful pedagogical analysis of its possibilities, limitations, and consequences. The objectives of this lecture may be considered in four directions. First, it is necessary to examine how technology reshapes the roles of both teacher and student in the digital age. Educational interaction is no longer organized in the same way as in traditional classrooms, and this requires reconsideration of pedagogical functions and responsibilities. Second, attention must be given to the impact of digital tools on student engagement and retention of information. Third, the lecture introduces contemporary platforms and resources that may be integrated into everyday educational practice. Finally, it is important to consider practical examples showing how technology can be used to strengthen both classroom instruction and remote forms of learning. What is emphasized here is the scale of change that technology has brought to education. Over recent decades, digital tools have not simply supplemented traditional teaching. They have altered the very organization of educational practice and expanded the possibilities of learning. Their significance lies in greater accessibility, broader variety of materials, and improved opportunities for adapting instruction to different learners. In this respect, digital learning has contributed to a more flexible, inclusive, and dynamic educational environment, one capable of responding more effectively to the diversity of contemporary students. This slide identifies the principal categories of technology currently used in education. The first is ICT, which includes computers, internet access, mobile devices, and educational software that support communication and access to information. The second category is online learning, which has expanded the possibilities of distance education through digital platforms, video conferencing, and virtual classrooms. The third is mobile technology, which makes learning more flexible by allowing students to study through portable devices at different times and in different places. The fourth is gamification, where elements of game structure are introduced in order to strengthen interest, participation, and sustained engagement. These categories show that educational technology is not a single tool, but a broad system of resources that influences both the form and the effectiveness of learning. Two major arguments for the use of technology in education are emphasized here. The first is increased accessibility. Digital tools reduce physical and geographical barriers, making educational materials available to students regardless of location or, in many cases, physical limitation. The second is personalized learning. Technology allows instruction to be adjusted to individual needs, learning pace, and cognitive style through adaptive platforms, differentiated tasks, and continuous feedback. In this sense, technology supports a more flexible and responsive educational process, better aligned with learner diversity. A central place in contemporary educational practice belongs to ICT and online learning platforms. Systems such as Moodle, Google Classroom, Coursera, and similar digital environments allow the teacher to organize courses, distribute materials, manage assessment, and maintain continuity of instruction in a structured form. Their pedagogical value lies not only in technical convenience. These platforms create a unified space in which communication, resources, assignments, and feedback are brought together. As a result, teacher-student interaction becomes more systematic, and access to learning materials becomes more stable and efficient. Virtual and augmented reality introduce a qualitatively different mode of learning, one based on immersion and simulation. Their educational value lies in the possibility of creating situations that cannot easily be reproduced within an ordinary classroom, whether because of risk, distance, cost, or physical limitation. Such technologies make it possible to organize virtual tours, model complex environments, and conduct simulated experiments under safe conditions. The example of virtual chemistry laboratories is especially illustrative. Students may explore processes experimentally without danger or excessive expense. In this way, VR and AR expand the practical and experiential dimensions of education. Mobile applications and gamification represent two influential directions in the use of technology for learning. Educational apps make it possible to transform everyday devices into instruments of study, allowing learners to engage with material in short, accessible, and interactive formats. In this way, learning becomes less dependent on a fixed classroom setting and more integrated into daily practice. Gamification serves a different though related function. By introducing points, rewards, and similar mechanisms, it strengthens motivation and sustains participation. When applied thoughtfully, such elements do not reduce education to play. Rather, they provide structure, immediacy, and a sense of progress that can deepen student engagement in the learning process. This slide identifies 4 pillars of digital pedagogy. The first is personalization, through which educational content may be adjusted to the learner's level, pace, and specific needs. The second is interactivity, which shifts students from passive reception toward active participation in the learning process. The third pillar is instant feedback. Digital tools make it possible to assess work more quickly and to provide learners with timely information about their progress. The fourth is efficiency, since collaborative platforms streamline communication, organization, and the management of educational tasks. Taken together, these elements show that digital pedagogy is not defined by technology itself, but by the pedagogical functions that technology makes more attainable. One of the notable effects of technology is the strengthening of student engagement through more autonomous forms of learning. Online courses and digital resources allow learners to progress at an individual pace, while the teacher retains the possibility of monitoring development and adjusting instruction where necessary. This changes the pedagogical position of the teacher. The emphasis moves away from constant direct transmission of information toward guidance, support, and regulation of the learning process. As a result, students assume greater responsibility for their own progress, and engagement becomes more active and self-directed. The integration of technology into education is accompanied by difficulties of two principal kinds. The first is technical insufficient equipment, unstable internet access, and hardware failure may seriously limit the effectiveness of digital instruction. In such cases, the solution lies in infrastructural improvement and in pedagogical planning that includes flexible offline alternatives. And the second group of difficulties concerns human factors. Resistance to change and insufficient teacher preparation often hinder meaningful use of technology even where equipment is available. Here the answer is not merely technical support, but sustained professional development, methodological guidance, and the dissemination of successful practice. Several conclusions may be drawn from the material presented. Technology has become a significant factor in education, particularly through its contribution to accessibility and personalization. Its value is especially evident where ICT, virtual environments, and mobile applications are used to adapt instruction to the needs of different learners. At the same time, successful implementation depends on more than the availability of digital tools. Issues of access, teacher preparedness, and pedagogical balance remain decisive. For this reason, modern education requires not the rejection of traditional methods, but their thoughtful coordination with new technological possibilities. Thank you for your attention and participation. I hope this lecture has provided a clearer understanding of how technology influences the educational process and why its pedagogical use requires both critical judgment and methodological balance. I will be glad to respond to your questions and discuss any points that may require further clarification.